welcome to episode 75 of Caropop. Our guest this week and next is one of the all-time great singer-songwriter performers, Graham Parker. From his 1976 debut album with the Rumour, Howlin Wind, through the all-time classic, Squeezing Out Sparks, through his commercial peaks in the 1980s and much excellent work since then, Parker has maintained one of the great rock and roll careers. There's been some R&B thrown in there for good measure as well. In part one of this two-parter, the British Parker guides us through his career from now to then and back again. His creativity and output have not slowed, and he has a new album almost ready for release. He'll also be touring the U.S. starting in late April and continuing throughout the summer. Much has changed over the years, yet much hasn't. He is, foremost, a singer-songwriter and always has been. Does he write songs with a band in mind, whether it's the Rumour or the players on his past couple of albums? How much do the songs evolve from demo to finished form? Does he tend to tell the band what to play? How did his recent reunion with the Rumour, his ace band on his first 5 studio albums, come about? How did their playing on the 2 newer albums he made with them, 3 Chords Good and Mystery Glue, differ from their earlier work? Have they all mellowed? How did the reunited Graham Parker and the Rumour wind up in the Judd Apatow film, This Is 40? Is Parker done again with the Rumour? Then we flash back on Parker's early years when he was growing up in an English town called, I kid you not, Deepcut. He loved the Beatles, the Stones, and American R&B. Which Motown singer did he wind up modeling his delivery after? Later, he went through a hippie singer-songwriter phase in the mode of Jackson Browne and James Taylor. But by the time he began recording with the Rumour, he was singing in his distinct angry voice and setting out to destroy the kind of music to which he'd been listening a few years earlier. How did that transition happen? Does he still sing with what he calls his nasty voice? What does he think when he listens to those early Graham Parker and the Rumour performances? His shows and the first Graham Parker and the Rumour albums, Howlin Wind, Heat Treatment, and Stick to Me, featured the 4-man horn section known as the Rumour Horns. The band started playing out in clubs, as many do, and were considered part of England's pub rock scene. Did Parker at any point think the music he was making was quote-unquote pub rock? He has some choice words about that term. He also discusses his bout with COVID and which album in his catalog that he considers a turning point. Graham Parker has one of rock's great voices, whether singing or talking, and as always, there's an urgency to what he has to say. Please enjoy this Caropop conversation with Graham Parker. Were you just recording a new album?
I started November 1st and finished sometime after Christmas in the new year, and it's mixed and mastered. So, yeah, that's in the bag. I don't know when it will be released yet. I suspect more like towards the fall than the spring, actually.
Who's your band on it?
It's the, actually, apart from the drummer, it's the same people who's on the last record, Cloud Cymbals, which you may not have heard, but...
I did. You got Martin Belmont on there. You got the Rumour horns back.
Yeah, we had those. I've got some horn players on this as well. Not the Rumour horns; they weren't available. So it's one of those things. Now you have to sit and wait for a bit because of certain, things here and there. They don't usually get records out as quick as they used to. The turnaround is a lot slower these days.
Do you have to wait for it to get pressed up on vinyl and all that too, or are you?
Well, our problem is here in our wisdom, we've left the greatest community of nations the world has ever known, the European Union, and we got most of our CDs and vinyl printed just across the channel in nations like Poland and the Netherlands. I think mine were coming from there. My record company were getting, but now we have to pay tariffs, of course, because we're not part of that community. We're not in the single market, so. Now everyone's fighting for the very few CD factories here, and I think there's one vinyl. So, we like to shoot ourselves in the foot now and again, and we've certainly done it with this.
Yeah, really. When you're writing for a new album like this one that's coming up, are you writing with the band in mind, or do you sort of write the songs and think, oh, this is who should play on it?
No, I definitely don't write with any band in mind. I just write songs, but... And this is very different from Cloud Cymbals. I thought it was going to be Cloud Cymbals Part 2. I thought that would be an enjoyable thing to do because I had a few songs I thought that they would be perfect to fit in with cloud cymbals. So, continuing that kind of feel. But it didn't work out that way because a lot of songs, quite a few jumped up that I'd written. There was about 3 of them from at least 10 years ago. And this occasionally happens. And one of them just seemed like some kind of advanced futuristic song. It has a lot of parts to it. And then I found a way to arrange it. And it was quite a drastic, there was some rather, for me, drastic arrangements. They're not quite typical. You'll recognize them as being me, but they're not in quite the same format as they nearly always are. That's what was holding me back about these songs. I thought these are kind of big, fat, medium tempo songs. I don't really want them to be. They're not my kind of thing now. They're, two long verses, then you get to the bridge and then a solo. So I came up with something much more radical and much more punchy from one change to another. Instead of 2 verses in a row, just one, then stop, do a bridge, then do a solo. Completely different, which makes it move along much, much better. And I thought they were much longer than they turned out to be. One I thought was very long, turned out to be 3 minutes 16 or something, or 30. And it's like to make a song that feels long and big and kind of grand in its scope, to get it down to that length. And I got one song that's 2 minutes something or other. And whenever I saw a song was under 3 minutes, I'd be going, yes, which is a discipline, a sort of discipline to it, as opposed to, I get them finished and realize it's 4 minutes 49. It's like, oh, come on, that'll bore the hell out of people. It'll bore the hell out of me after about 10 lessons. There's things like that I'm very pleased of. They're more technical things, I suppose, but at the same time, I guess it's artistic because it's appealing to me. So, yeah, I'm quite excited.
Are you figuring that stuff out in the studio with the musicians, or is that you kind of playing with it before you get there?
Well, they get demos based usually on a cell phone. This time I went to one of the musicians, or 2 of them actually, to their home studios and did the demos, maybe a little overdub. I like to go into a studio, because I'm the producer as well. I like to go into a studio with the song 95% in place. And once the band hear it, they just learn it. They learn the outline of it. But once you start playing it, then the thinking starts. Then the realization is not a guy on an acoustic guitar anymore. It's a bunch of people. Very different thing. I quickly have some suggestions, and then, or I just say to people, okay, bring it. Okay, just keep finding something, and then I say that. Okay, follow that. That's the thing. That's the feel of it, because it's sometimes it's hard to get to the gist of a song, where it's coming from, in many ways, until it's fleshed out quite a bit. Otherwise it's just a guy on an acoustic guitar. I really like to go in very well prepared. I mean, I practice a lot. I even went to a rehearsal room before with my guitar to sing the songs over and over again through equipment, with a microphone to get that feeling instead of singing them quietly at home. The preparation is important, but having the right musicians is important. I mean, we never did more than 5 takes of a song, and often it was the second one that made the cut. So that's how good these people are.
How detailed do you tend to be with these demos and then your instructions to the musicians? Like, will you say, all right, this is the guitar riff, this is what I want the bass to be doing, or is it more like, here's the song and fill in the way you think you should?
Well, yeah, sometimes the bass riffs, for instance, are inherent in my bass note playing on the acoustic guitar. I'm always doing bass patterns as I play, and they're so obvious to a good bass player that there's no problem. And maybe as we're playing, there's a change in the song, and I'll ask the bass player to maybe make this a bit more blue notes, whereas the others has been very major chords thing. This could work in a sort of more bluesy note kind of thing, and play something on my acoustic, suggest it, and off they go. And we only record as with drums. It's drums, bass, and electric guitar. That's Martin Belmont again. And I'm playing generally, I'm all songs but one, acoustic and live vocals. So it's a live performance in the studio. And that's been my route for many years since I called myself the producer, rashly, in 1988 and made the Mona Lisa Sister, which I said, this song will not be about drum sounds. This record will not sound like the 80s where the drum sound was more important than the voice. This will be about the singer and the song, the acoustic guitar and the voice, and that's how we based this record. And I've done more or less that since, in some way or another. The vocals are usually a live thing with the acoustic. So that's why I need so much preparation up front, because I haven't played them live on stage. And the first time recording them, you suddenly the red light goes on and it's like, holy moly, I better know what I'm doing. The panic takes over and somehow it all comes out pretty good. So you're sort of staring between the lyrics on the music stand and flicking your eyes over there and looking at musicians nodding through the booth to instruct them, we're going to that part now, It's a very live, interactive performance. Right. That's what I found works for my songs, and you tend to learn what you're doing after a number of years.
When a little more than 10 years ago, you did 3 Chords Good with the Rumour, and then you did Mystery Glue a few years later. Was that an instance where you thought, oh, it'd be good to get these guys together, and I'm going to write? I mean, did you have songs that you thought, oh, this would be really great for this particular band, or was it more just a sense of, hey, it would just be nice to play with these guys again?
Well, no, not in the slightest. When the songs for the first reunion record, for instance, Mystery Glue, I'd just written them. And then I thought, well, seeing as I record songs in a stripped-down fashion, as I say, the Cloud Symbols record and this newer one, I brought the keyboard player in after, for instance, once we got the basic tracks, and then I get horn section and whatever else I'm going to do, and do some backing vocals. I've actually got a new album, I've got girl backing vocals. I haven't done that for a very long time and never did really much of it. So there's a real difference in the feel right there. But the Mystery Glue songs, you see, I basically just got hold of Steve, the drummer, and Andrew, the bass player, and said, it's been a while. Why don't we? I got some songs, and I think we could do this as a 3-piece, and then I'll do what I've been doing, which is I'll play all the electric. And Steve Goulding literally made a joke. He said, "Well, why don't you get Martin, Martin Brinsley, and Bob, and have a proper band?" And I very foolishly did that. I emailed people, and it was only after I thought, this is going to cost me a lot of money. What the hell have I just done? An absurd idea. Why? And I listened to the songs and thought, what have these got to do with the Rumour? And then I realized, well, they got everything to do with the Rumour. There's no problem. They can play any of this stuff. And so there it was. I was stuck with it, and then I got a call from Judd Apatow, and there it was.
Now, did Judd call you because he knew you'd gotten the Rumour back together and thought that?
No, he didn't. I met with him in New York. He I talked to him on the phone, and I said, "Are you going to be anywhere in New York? Anywhere, anytime. Tell me, I'll meet you." So I drove down to the city there. I was based more in upstate then than in Britain. I'm still on both sides of the pond, really, foot in both sides. But I drove down there and sat with him in his hotel in a bar on our own, and he's talking to me about the character in this film, that maybe I could do the character. And then I dropped the bomb on him. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Judd, I just reformed the Rumour, and we're going to do an album. And there's a guy making a documentary who thought he made the documentary, and then I did what I told him I would never do, reform the Rumour. So there's going to be, so I said to him, why don't you put the Rumour in your movie? He's literally, his head went back like that. What? And he said, okay. And so a lot of the filming for the documentary was done by the documentarian, Michael Gramalia, and a lot of it comes up on the Blu-ray on the Judd App on This Is 40. Blu-ray is pretty spectacular, a lot of great stuff, and an entire show of ours when we were filming for the movie, our on stage bits. We did about 12 songs over and over again for 3 days, and they picked out, always it's got to be very small parts, but there was so much, Judd actually put a whole disc, I think, or something. There was a disc, actually, yeah. A DVD. So there's a lot. There were so many aspects to what happened after I accidentally reformed the Rumour. There were all these things. This can't be happening. This. I did not do it for this, but it was a terrific bump for all of us. Terrific bounce.
Well, did you? I mean, I assume you enjoyed it because you went and did another album with them, and you toured with them as well.
Yeah, I knew that I would have to do another. I mean, it was just, and we had to do some gigs. We had to. Of course, we started off with the premise of forget the gigs, we just do an album. But you know what it's going to turn into. It's going to turn into offers coming in that you can't refuse. And it had to turn into another album. And by the time we'd done that, we were, we've done it. We've done our bit.
Yeah, I was actually, when you did your Squeezing Out Sparks anniversary tour and you did that solo, I was wondering if you considered doing that with the Rumour as well, or whether you just sort of felt like I've done my Rumour thing.
No, I've done the Rumour thing, I think. Yeah, I think we've done it. I think you should quit while you're just in the right position, and we were. It was satisfying. It's enough. It's a tremendous undertaking with bands. It's basically a break even, if you're lucky, situation. And we were doing, nice, the kind of halls we left our period before in. We were doing the theatre type stuff and, some really great, perfect places for us. But yeah, it was definitely, enough. I don't see it happening again. We're not getting any younger as well.
When you all got back together, was it sort of like you'd gone in a time machine and all of a sudden you remembered all of the little idiosyncrasies you had when you were in your 20s and 30s, or was it more like we're these older, wiser people and our dynamic has changed?
Oh yeah, well we play differently now. We're not, we played when some of the band members, for instance, listened back to us on stage, live versions of the songs that we were going to do. Plenty of old ones, of course we were. We all said the same thing. I mean, these are train wreck speed. They were train wreck speed. We got faster and faster every year, which tends to make everything sound like it's a bit of a straight line instead of having depth to it. And we have had no intention, any of us, of trying to play New York Shuffle the same speed we did back in the day, but we kind of got close, actually. The excitement of being on stage is definitely going to sort of double the speed pretty quick. But a lot of the time we really held back, like a song like Lady Doctor from the first album. That's a jazz swing song. It shouldn't be the kind of breakneck speed we were starting to do it in. By the time we got to 78, 79, we'd stopped doing that, and we were all about sort of rock fast. There was a lot of that. But this was just natural where I want to be with songs now, and they wanted to be the same place, which is a much more musical adventure than a slap you in the head adventure. We did that. We were young.
Yeah, it seems like there's sort of a full circle effect a little bit with your music in that, you listen to Howlin Wind and obviously you hear those R&B influences and those kind of shuffling rhythms and everything. And then, yeah, everything sort of got straightened out, more aggressive for a while. But when you go back to Cloud Cymbals, you're hearing those, shuffling rhythms and their R&B kind of stuff again. And it seems like that's your pocket, that's your comfort area, or not comfort, but it's something that you're really good at and like going back to.
It is. It's suddenly sort of appeared again naturally, as well. I mean, I can feel that the swing kind of thing of White Honey and, as you say, the shuffle and that kind of groove, push-pull groove, very rock and roll swing instead of rock, shall we say.
Right.
It's not sort of big anthemic rock songs, which... we moved into those areas pretty well, and but at the same time I had the basics of soul and R&B and that. So we combined the two pretty good, but much more now the swing and with almost the jazz influenced that was in Lady Doctor. Going right back to that is in some of the songs on Cloud Cymbals, and it's in some of the new ones. It's in a couple of cities. So it's kind of I think it's my kind of groove, and for solo performance, those kind of grooves work very well for me. You know, playing Local Girls solo is just like having a dead weight around my shoulders. It's a 4/4 rock groove, so there's some songs that aren't really good for solo. So you have to adjust, and you're definitely right. That's the kind of feel that we sort of were good at, me and the Rumour, and I'm good at, post Rumour.
When you were growing up, what was a bigger influence on you, the Beatles or like American R&B?
It's hard to trace. I mean, the Beatles and the Stones were, of course, why all of us at age 12 picked up musical instruments, because they weren't like somebody from Alabama or, they were like guys, lived up the street, really, just up in London, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Bill Wyman. And the Beatles were up in Liverpool. They were sort of reachable distances. They were older than me, of course, when I first heard them, when they first hit the charts. But they didn't seem that older, like they were like your older cousin. So it didn't seem impossible. And it didn't take long. I mean, the first Stones album, it's like a book of knowledge on where it all came from. There's Chuck Berry songs on there. There's I'm a King Bee, Buzzing Around You. There's these blues songs. I'd sort of heard a bit of this because, for one thing, before the Beatles came along, my mother worked for part-time every now and again, not often, for a thing just around the corner where I grew up. There's a lot of army there, huge army base all around. All the land was owned by the army, apart from my little village in the middle of it all. And she worked for the officers' mess, which is where officers used to go. And they would have tea, and they would have dinner and stuff, and they'd have parties, and my mum would go and serve them tea and this kind of thing. And when there was a night party on, she'd go and serve. And one or two of them asked her about, "Oh, my son, you got a son? Yeah, what does he like?" And she said, "Oh, he likes music and collecting matchboxes." So these guys, they were always stationed in exotic places, Japan and stuff like that. So they'd collect these matchbooks and bring them back. They'd give them to my mum. They got these massive boxes of them. I got some in my attic here in London and some in my attic in America. I always found it supremely fascinating. So they'd give them that, and also they'd give her records, because they'd always say, "Well, I can't travel I'm off to somewhere, Singapore tomorrow or Germany. I can't carry them with me." And I had a stack of Little Richard singles, like they come off of jukeboxes with those little plastic bits that you stick in. So I had Little Richard, and then the Beatles come along, and what's Paul McCartney singing? They're singing Little Richard, like Good Golly Miss Molly. And so, I don't know, they're doing those kind of covers. And, other things like Chuck Berry, that you'd hear that because they did those songs, the Stones and the Beatles, didn't they? Roll Over Beethoven, the Beatles. Right. And Oh Carol, the Stones, tremendous number on the first album. And then you'd hear, the radio, pirate radio. And that's where you'd hear Chuck Berry. And it's like, oh, there's all these full circles going on. And you realize it's all from American black people, the whole lot of it. Pretty much. Of course, the advanced writing of the Beatles was like, that's from another planet. They could write anything in any style. Look at what they did. The Stones, at first at least, were a white British R&B band, and they were doing covers, and then they wrote songs which were still very based in American styles. But of course, next thing you know, there's a sitar on a song. There's all that influence comes into it. But the Stones, I suppose, more than anyone, were truer to their roots in the long run, in so many ways.
So did you start writing songs trying to sound like the Stones then, or like what was your first impulse to say, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot?
Well, when I was 13, me and some guys got together and had what I call a dress-up band. In other words, we dressed like the Beatles. This was sort of instant. 12 years old, heard the Beatles, see their haircuts, grow your hair like that, get some Cuban heels.
Was that the Deepcut trio?
Yeah, the Deepcut 3. And then we added a member, and we were called the Black Rockers. And we couldn't play, you know, it was just like bluffing, making a racket.
So you grew up in a town called Deepcut.
Yeah, one word that is. That's a village, tiny village.
I mean, but like for someone who's like put out so many albums, great albums with so many great deep cuts on them, that's sort of it's kind of a fate thing, right? Like if you grew up in, you know, you had to grow up in Deepcut to have your career.
I guess so. Maybe. It was, you know, I didn't choose it. I was born in London, but only here for 4 years. But yeah, I wrote a song at the age 12 or 13 called Won't You Come Back, which was totally Beatles. And, you know, I had older friends, though. They knew about folk music. They knew about blues. When I had a Muddy Waters record, they were about like a year and a bit older than me, which seemed so knowledgeable and distant to me, of course, as a kid. But they had this cool music, and they were all going to go to art school. You know, they went to art school as soon as they left school. Where there was a huge amount of folk influence, blues influence. They knew all this stuff, so I got an education from them as much as anything as well.
So you had an album called The Middlesex Demos that came out last year, and that was these old, you know, demos you were doing in the early 70s. They had more of this sort of acoustic folk kind of thing. Is that where you were going for that now? And sort of how did that sort of change from that to what you wound up recording?
Well, if you listen to that, there are some musicians on there that the guy who recorded me got some musicians and, you know, didn't charge me anything. He paid them because it was a small publishing company, and it was before my career started, yes, but I was desperate. I didn't know how to break into it at all, and I saw an ad in the music paper. Songwriters wanted a publishing company. So I called up, and they said, well, you know, yeah, we'd like to hear something. No biggie. So I might have made a tape with a borrowed Revox at the time, or I think I might have gone up to London and sat down with them, played some songs, and they liked them a lot, and they signed me to this little deal. And then one of them had a studio in his backyard and said, yeah, let's record, you know, everything you've got. And it wasn't really everything, because I had hundreds of songs, but most of them were based in my periods of, you know, flying the freak flag, really. You know, I had hair down to my hips, you know, and I was full on, you know, hippie, as it was called in America. More, we call ourselves heads or freaks here. We didn't like the word hippie. But so I was definitely into, you know, listening to the Incredible String Band, which they were acoustic. So there's one thing, you know. So that was good. And yeah, but there's Pink Floyd on the other hand, and Electric Ladyland album. You know, the Beatles albums when they went psychedelic a bit, when they were influenced by all that, and it was the Santana album with, you know, Abraxas, and Captain Beefheart got into the mix at the esoteric, crazy end of things. I've got Court of the Crimson King on my iPlayer now. To this day, I listen to it now and again. So there was that. So I was writing songs like that. But there was also James Taylor, and it was like that was much more the easy way to go, to be like James Taylor, or, you know, then Jackson Browne, who I loved a great deal. I love the singer-songwriters. I consider myself a singer-songwriter first, before anything anyway. And so I was learning to fingerpick and write some of those songs. You know, this is in the 67 and 68 period when I was left home and various different places. So there were a lot of songs that I had to leave behind, hundreds and hundreds, you know. There were a few that crept through on some early things, but the songs on the Middlesex tapes there, they are... there's some that sort of show the two sides of me. One, that singer-songwriter, gentle voice, really. There's a song on there, Telegraph Wires or something like that it's called, or I Want to Stay Here Loving You, that's it. There's a song like that, very pretty and very, very singer-songwriter, picking a guitar. And there's songs like Time Bomb Blues, where my voice goes into something closer to what would be happening when I finally hit my stride and the best songs started coming out. I mean, by 73, I think, by the time I'd finished with that music publisher situation and knew I had to get something better because they didn't really understand what I was doing. They weren't really hip. Let's put it that way. Those two guys, and and then I found these musicians in London, and I'd be driving up from the suburbs to London and practicing with this Noel Brown guy who ended up playing dobro on the Howlin Wind album. And, they led me towards this guy, Dave Robinson. So there's the story there. And he led me towards the Rumour. But that I had a bit of experience there in the studio on those Middlesex demos because, there was a microphone suddenly in front of me. I'd had no experience before. I'd never been on a real stage, really, in any shape or form until the Rumour. And I didn't, but there I'd at least been in the studio and realised, okay, microphone, you've got to have your voice somewhere near it. You're restricted all of a sudden, and your guitar's there and the microphone's there, and so I got a bit of a hang of it then. It was good. It was good practice for the real thing.
Right. Well, as you developed your vocal approach, because you ended up obviously with a very distinct voice, was that being driven by the kind of songs you were writing, or were you sort of singing in this way and thought, oh, this is the way the song should sound to fit this approach that I'm taking?
Well, I've said it before. I mean, typical of youth fashion, I wanted to destroy prog rock that I'd been listening to a couple of years before. And I thought the only way to do that was to be intensely angry, the absolute opposite of peace and love. And somehow my songs got a bit more and more aggressive and tough. And my voice, I had no practice with them on a stage. I didn't know how to sing, so I just screamed, really. It was all throat action. I didn't really know about the singing from the body or any of that. But somehow, listening back, it's like, it's hard for me to listen. It's too abrasive. It's not pleasant for me. At the same time, I'm hearing my voice well. I was better than I thought. At least I give myself that credit. I'm still better than I thought. I'm actually going up to a falsetto and wavering the note a little bit. There's something, there's sort of, something in there that's got potential. But that's all I see now in my singing in the early days, potential. It's just too nasty. It's off-putting, really.
So is it hard for you to listen to those early albums of yours?
Oh, yeah, it's unpleasant, yeah. But the music it's really tremendous.
What was the first record of yours where you listened to it and you think, oh, this is how I should be singing?
Before I started to knuckle down and start really trying to write and learn to play better, which wasn't until, the age of 18, really. I'd kind of ignored it and did regular jobs. I think I was a bit intimidated by the idea of learning to play properly and really trying to make a go of this. I had no idea whether I was good enough or not, so I didn't really bother much. But I think by the time I was getting there with Squeezing Out Sparks, I think there was semblance of an actual singing voice. But it was really Mona Lisa's sister, because of the fact that I said, this is guitar, it's about the guitar, acoustic guitar, and the singer and the songs, not about the drum sounds, not about that, and it's going to be as little instruments as possible. I'd had it with that 80s thing already, and it was still the 80s. It was at 87 when I was writing those songs and probably recording the record now. And that's when it came out a lot better. I found a lot more elements in my voice, which I had sort of crushed for many years. And so it became more satisfying for me because it widened my scope in every single way. Songwriting wise, so I can sing a song that I've written the way I feel it should be sung instead of bluffing it, and forcing it upon the listener. They don't all have to smash people over the head. Right? They don't have to do that. Even so, I'll listen back to something from the 90s or 2000s and think, oh, God, too fast, man. Or, I've still got that nasty tone I can't help. This nasty tone is still there to a certain extent. At first I'm recording it, I think that is where I want to be. But sometimes I listen, later on you listen to the mixes and think, I still sound a bit nasty. God damn it. You can't win.
Nasty's okay sometimes.
Yeah, it sure as hell is, yeah. So it's, I have to lighten up a bit. and accept, it's not bad to have that little bit of grit in there. It's just balanced now with an actual voice. So I'm pretty satisfied with that to as much as I can be.
When you were getting ready to, launch your recording career, did you like the idea of hooking up with a band that was always already formed, like the Rumour, or did you want to sort of assemble your own band or be part of a band, or did you want sort of the flexibility of I'm a singer-songwriter and, a lot of these singer-songwriters work with different musicians every time and I'm just going to do what I want to do?
Well, once the Rumour were in place, I didn't know any other musicians apart from a few that I'd been playing with before who led me towards Dave Robinson and the Rumour, Noel Brown and this guy, Paul Riley, who was in a band that actually, were professional and made a record and stuff. Those guys. And then there was the Rumour. So I was, obviously they could cover all the bases. But by the time I got to 4 albums, Squeezing Out Sparks, I think that it was like, I suddenly realized I might have a career here. This might actually be what I do. I might not just, the song writing might not wear off, which is something you don't know. I don't know.
You thought it would, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know. When we all started off with the idea that this pop music was meant to be ephemeral, it's meant to be sort of there and gone, a will o' the wisp, and so the Stones and the Beatles thought the same thing. They thought, this will be good for a year,
right?
And then we go back to the jobs, be back to being a plumber, or Mick Jagger join the London School of Economics or whatever. They thought that way because it was meant to be that way. You weren't meant to. Somehow there was a bit of brain fog there about the fact that the people that they loved were like some of them are 60s, 70s. These old the black guys that they got so much influence from were still playing. It didn't occur to people that we would still be playing. Those kind of guys. And the same for me. It didn't occur to me. It was like, wow, all I cared about was getting a record deal with a real label. Imagine it. And a good band behind it who understands what you're doing. That's all I looked at it as. I just thought that would be it. Maybe I'd make an album and then I could go, do what you do, live in the suburbs, work in a supermarket, and I could, at least in the pub, somebody would say, Graham, you made a record, didn't you, once? Cool, fantastic. That must have been amazing. And that, it would be like that. It would be like you talk about this one record.
Right.
You didn't know. And then it was like, suddenly I've come to 4 records and Squeezing Out Sparks it's none too shabby, And then the Up Escalator, none too shabby. So by that time, though, I was thinking, I'm restricting myself by staying with the same musicians. I'm restricting myself. I have to explore. And, touring it's brutality on a stick. We were doing touring for practically a year. I took a break in 1980. Did 2 shows. One was the final show with the Rumour, and that was it. I didn't do any more gigs because I thought I do this every year. I'm like this. I'm the horse that they throw out onto the track, endlessly. And so I stopped, and good thing, very good thing to do. And then retooled again and started, and off I was into another grey area, basically letting Jack Douglas, the producer, bring in the musicians, apart from Nicky Hopkins, who I'd worked with on the Up Escalator. So he was a natural to bring back in. And I think he was far more suited for the Another Grey Area album than the Up Escalator album. It really clicked with me and him then. And we became very good friends. It was, sad when he died too young, but he was a real friend. We used to hang out a lot.
Yeah, and he'd get all that Stones pedigree too,
And everything else.
Yeah, everything.
Hit record after hit record. The documentary is being made and probably, hopefully, finished about Nicky, and that was basically my idea, because the guy who was a fan and trying to get sort of people, I contributed to a bench in Nicky Hopkins, where he grew up in London. Perivale Park, a beautiful bench that has my name on it and Yoko Ono's and all these people who contributed some money for this beautiful bench. And I said to the guy, you've got to make a documentary. It's a no-brainer. Look at the people you will get in this documentary.
Right.
No, it's a no-brainer, man. And so that's what he did. And he's got loads of amazing people in, and that's... I would have gone to a screening, but my record, I was just about to start this record in November. And believe it or not, 3 of the musicians got COVID. And the drummer got it in September and was still ill in November. And I had to quickly, in the last week, scramble for a drummer. Yeah. Martin, my guitarist, got it 10 days before. And I thought, he's never going to clear up. And he did. 2 days before the album, he was all right. The bass player got it when he was out doing a theatre gig. So I thought I was going to have to redo the dates and go through all this again. So there was all that going on. But anyway, it all worked out well.
Yeah, I'd like to see that Nicky Hopkins documentary.
Yeah, I would. I didn't go to the screening because 3 of the band members get COVID. One of them on a respirator and in hospital various times. Months later is still not capable of playing on a record. So I thought, I'm not going to a small gathering of people in a small place and be the one who gets COVID like 2 days before I go into the studio. So I haven't seen the screening of it, but they're on the track. It's in the works.
Have you gotten COVID?
No, no. I may have done in March. This date I'll remember, March 2020. I may have done. I went through a full range of symptoms one day, and then including loss of taste. Not bad, but I could feel it. I had a fever. I had a light fever, and I was trying to walk down the road go for a 2-mile walk because you could walk anywhere in London if you kept moving. Beautiful weather. So I got down the road and felt totally exhausted. I knew something was up. Came back. By evening, I got my taste back.
Wow.
And then the next day I felt a bit fuzzy, but that was it. So I may have got it. Now, that's before vaccines, and I couldn't find a mask for love or money. And I was going into shops around here, sort of putting my hand in my face, So it's not surprising, but I may have I read it, if you get a very small dose of the inoculum, I think it's called, you might get some, what do you call it, protection. And that's may what have happened with me. I don't know. I'll never know. But it was certainly very suspicious. And so if I dodged a bullet, I got lucky. And then the vaccines came and much more protection from it,
When you started with the Rumour, was there ever a point where you thought, oh, we're playing pub rock?
No, when I saw those words popping up in reviews of me, I thought, what are they talking about? I didn't. Nobody knew what pub rock. Nobody knew what that was. Nobody I knew. Nobody mentioned it until I came to London to meet this guy Noel Brown after the advert in the Melody Maker, and met him and Paul Riley, who was in a band called Chilly Willy, who apparently played in bands that played in pubs. And then I've got these musicians around me. And I'd been given one of their albums, I think, a Brinsley Schwartz album. I thought, wow, well, they're playing a lot of lame country crap here. What is this? I don't know what it is. It's pretty lame. And it was like, why is this moniker that doesn't exist, being applied to me? And it's guilt by association. It's 100% guilt by association. But some reason I became the poster boy of something that doesn't exist and that I had nothing to do with and did not know existed. That's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it, right there? Yeah. Talk about ruining any chance of people seeing what I am clearly. Right there with pub rock, that'll do it. It's not a good thing. It's a stupid thing, for one thing. I don't think that Levi Stubbs and blues artists and R&B are considered pub rock. Right. And where did I get it from? My favorite singers, Otis Redding, Levi Stubbs. If you listen to Levi Stubbs, that might account for my aggressive approach in singing. Obviously, he's a great singer and I'm not, but If you listen to him singing Bernadette, he's singing a love song about, you know, the girls left him. It sounds like he wants to kill somebody. and you know, those are my singing. I don't think it's called pub rock. That is it, Mark? Can you tell me?
No, it's definitely not. That's definitely not called pub rock.
No, the Rolling Stones played in pubs. That's where you start.
The Cavern Club was, you know, the Beatles, so.
It was a pub, yeah, basically. You know, it's a back room in a pub. Stones played in the Wooden Bridge in Guildford, very near where I grew up. It's a pub. There's a back room, and you can go there and drink, and when the bands are on or not. And then the Stones would be on the stage. I never saw them. Missed out. I was a bit too young, but so, you know, it's whatever it is, but it doesn't matter what I say. People will always say, of course, you were around with the pub rock scene. No, I fucking wasn't. You know, it's like, God damn it. It just even in a book that was written, you know, there was some talk about some of the London musicians who were at this show by a group called Eggs Over Easy, you know, who the Rumour saw and said, we should play like that variety of songs and play in pubs. Forget trying to make it. Let's play in pubs. And it was like, no, I wasn't. I told the guy I had nothing to do with pub rock. I didn't know about the origins, these other bands that Brinsley, Schwartz, and the people saw and thought were good. I told him that, and it still ended up in the book. Parker was one of the people at those games. No, I wasn't. Accuracy. It's not a bad thing to get some accuracy into this.
Well, Brinsley, as I recall, said that, you know, because they were playing in pubs and there weren't a lot of shows in pubs, that they became sort of the poster boys. Brinsley Schwartz, the band, became sort of the poster boys for pub rock. What were they playing? They were playing this kind of country stuff, but then became a little more sort of R&B flavored. And so that sound became associated with pub rock. But really, playing in a pub, you can play, you know, balls out rock and roll. You can play whatever you're going to play. It's a pub. Like, it doesn't really connote the style of music you're playing. And, you know, Van Morrison was doing songs like that. Nobody said, oh, Van Morrison's in his pub rock phase.
Yeah, if you want to say a big musical influence as well, Van Morrison, you know, was a very big influence on my singing. Although I was this horribly aggressive, you know, wanted to kill people, sort of beat everyone up, beat up the world sound in my voice. He was a very big influence. And, of course, we know what his influences were, a wide variety of swing, jazz, blues, soul.
Right.
You know, so I'm just sort of following through on that, really. No question about it. So, you know, there's influence right there, not something called pub rock, of course.
That's all for episode 75 of Caropop. Thanks so much to Graham Parker for being so open and gracious in looking back on his inspired and inspiring years in music. Go to his official website, grahamparker.net, to order merch and exclusive editions of some of his albums and to see his upcoming solo tour itinerary. It includes shows at Freight and Salvage in Berkeley, California on May 13th, New York's City Winery on May 31st, and Chicago's Old Town School of Folk Music on July 14th. You also can follow him on Twitter at It's Graham Parker, no apostrophe. Caropop is produced by Chris Swake, who has steady nerves and hits the spot every time. I'm Mark Caro. Please follow Caropop on Twitter at CaropopCast. And you can follow me as well at Mark Caro at MarkCaro. Also visit the Caropop website, caropop.com, where you can find this podcast and enter your email address so you can hear about upcoming episodes and events. Please share, subscribe, tell your friends, and tune in again next week for part 2 of our conversation with the great British musician, Graham Parker. Thanks.